The library smelled of beeswax and old paper, and Marisol Vance had been standing in the middle of it for 9 full minutes before anyone bothered to acknowledge her existence. She kept her hands folded in front of her, her chin level. The footman who had ushered her in had vanished without a word. The clock above the marble mantel ticked with the patient malice that only old houses possessed, and somewhere on the other side of the heavy oak door behind her, 2 men were arguing in voices low enough to be deniable, but sharp enough to draw blood. She did not eavesdrop. She listened, which was a different thing, and a skill her late father had drilled into her, along with 7 languages. The argument ended. The door behind her opened. "Miss Vance." She turned. The man who had said her name was perhaps 50, silver at the temples, dressed in the uncomplicated black of a senior secretary. He did not introduce himself. He gestured her toward a smaller door set into the paneling, half hidden behind a tapestry. "His Grace will see you now. You will speak only when spoken to. You will not repeat anything you read or hear within these walls. You will not write down anything you are shown. Is that understood?" "Perfectly." "Through there, then." She walked through the smaller door and into a room she had not expected. It was the private study of a man who did not wish to be found, and the difference was visible in every surface. No portraits, no crested seal on the desk. The windows shuttered against the afternoon light, the only illumination a brass lamp burning low and the embers of a fire that had been left to die. A wall of books behind glass, the spines unmarked, and at the desk, his back to her, a man writing with the unhurried steadiness of someone who had decided long ago that the world could wait. He did not turn. "Sit, Miss Vance." She sat. He continued writing for another 30 seconds, and she allowed herself, in that interval, to look at him. Black coat, finely cut, the shoulders broad in the way of a man who rode rather than danced. Dark hair cut shorter than fashion required, a signet ring on his right hand, but turned inward so the device was hidden against his palm. He finished his sentence, set the quill in its rest, and turned. "Anselm Caradoc," he said, "Duke of Holbridge, you have been recommended to me." His eyes were the color of cold tea, and they did not move from her face. "Recommended by whom, Your Grace?" "That is the first thing you will not ask." She inclined her head a fraction. "Then I will not ask it." A flicker of something that might have been approval. He pulled open a drawer, removed a single folded sheet of paper, and set it on the desk between them. "I require a translation. 1 letter. Old French from the look of it, though I suspect a regional dialect. The hand is poor. The paper is older than anyone in this house. I am told you are the only person within 50 miles who can render it without sending it through 3 intermediaries, each of whom would read it before I did. How was that determined? By the same person who recommended you, whom I cannot ask about. You learn quickly." She took the letter. He had not unfolded it for her. She did not look at him as she opened it. She looked at the paper, the ink, the fold, the seal that had been broken decades ago and resealed once with a crude wax that did not match. The hand was indeed poor. The dialect was not French at all. It was a coastal patois from a province that had not existed under that name for 60 years, and the writer had been educated but afraid, and had used a shorthand for 2 of the proper nouns that she recognized only because her father had served as an attaché in that province before she was born. She read the first 3 lines. Her stomach went cold. "How long do you require, Miss Vance?" She lifted her eyes from the paper and met his. "Your Grace," she said carefully, "before I answer, I must ask whether you know what this letter contains." A pause, a long one. "I know what I have been told it contains." "And were you told it concerns the legitimacy of a child?" The lamp guttered. He did not move. "Continue." I am only 3 lines in. I cannot yet tell you whose child. I can tell you that 2 of the names have been deliberately obscured by a shorthand the writer learned in the household of a particular family. And I can tell you that whoever sealed this letter the second time did so with wax taken from a candle, not from a signet, which suggests the second sealer did not have access to the original device, which suggests, in turn, that the letter has been intercepted at least once. He was very still now, the kind of still that good hunters were when something larger than expected stepped into the clearing. Go on. I would prefer to finish the translation before I go on. I would also prefer to know, before I do, what happens to me when I have finished. The corner of his mouth moved. It was not a smile. That depends on what the letter says. Then I would prefer to know what happens to me, regardless of what the letter says. The silence stretched. He studied her, and she did not look away. You will be paid the sum we agreed upon through my secretary. You will be returned to your lodgings tonight. You will not be followed. You will not be threatened. You will not be contacted again unless I have further need of your services, in which case you will be free to refuse. And if the letter says something you do not wish anyone alive to know. He did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was quieter and harder. Then I will pay you considerably more, and the conditions of your silence will be agreed upon between us, in this room, before you leave it. I do not threaten women, Miss Vance. I also do not lie to them about the world they are walking into. You may finish the letter, or you may set it down now and walk out, and I will pay you for your time either way. Her hands were steady. She was distantly proud of that. I will finish it. Good. There is paper at the side table. I will be in the next room. Knock when you are done. He stood. He paused with his hand on the latch. Miss Vance, whatever the letter says, you will tell me precisely. Word for word. Not what you think I want to hear. I don't know what you want to hear, Your Grace. Good, he said again, and went through the door and closed it behind him. She sat alone in the lamplight, with a letter that could ruin a kingdom, and unfolded it the rest of the way and began to read. She was 3 pages into the translation when she realized her hand had been shaking for a full minute without her noticing, and she set down the quill before the tremor reached the ink. The letter was worse than she had feared. It was not a single accusation. It was a confession threaded through with a second confession and a third. The writer was a woman, dying, and she was naming a child. Not the present Duke's child. A child who would, if the letter were true, displace an heir somewhere very high above Marisol's station and unseat an arrangement that families had been killing one another to protect for 2 generations. She did not yet know the families involved, but she knew enough to know that the man in the next room had handed her a weapon and asked her to sharpen it for him. She breathed in slowly through her nose, breathed out, and picked up the quill. Her father had taught her this trick. When the work is large, make the hand small. When the meaning is dangerous, make the letters precise. Fear is a tremor. Discipline is a line. Hugh Vance had been a translator for the Foreign Office for 31 years. He had taught his daughter 7 languages by the time she was 15, the way other fathers taught embroidery, and for the same reason, because a woman with a useful skill could feed herself when no one else would. He had died 4 years ago, in a room above a stationer's, of a fever that had taken 3 days. He had left her debts she had not known about, and a reputation in 3 small circles that paid her enough, barely, to keep a single set of rooms. She had not expected to be summoned to a duke's house. She had not, until this morning, known the Duke of Holbridge existed. She finished the page. She set the original to one side and the translation beside it, lined up edge to edge, and started the next. It was on the 4th page that she saw her own name, not Marisol. Vance. A Vance had carried this letter once, 60 years ago, across a channel and 2 borders on behalf of an embassy that had paid him in coin, marked with a seal she had grown up seeing on her father's writing case. Her grandfather. It had to be. Her grandfather, whose name she had not been told until she was 12, whose work had killed him before her father was born. She stared at the line until the ink stopped meaning anything. Then she translated it, exactly as it stood, into the careful round letters she had been making since she was 6. Behind her, the inner door opened. She did not turn. She finished the line, blotted it, set the quill down, and only then looked over her shoulder. The Duke of Holbridge stood in the doorway. He had taken off his coat. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows, and there was a smear of black ink along the inside of his right wrist that he did not seem to know was there. He was not holding anything. He was simply standing there, watching her work, and she had the disconcerting sense that he had been there for some time. You said you would knock when you were done. You are not done. Then why are you here? Because you stopped, Miss Vance, for a longer interval than the previous pages required, and I wished to know whether you had come to a passage you could not read, or one you did not wish to. She turned in the chair to face him fully. Did not wish to. Ah. He did not come further into the room. He leaned his shoulder against the doorframe, folded his arms, and waited. My grandfather, she said, carried this letter. A pause. You are certain? I am certain that a man with my surname carried a letter with this seal across this route in the year, written at the top of page 4. Whether it was this letter, I cannot prove. But I do not believe in coincidences of that size, Your Grace, and I do not think you do either. I do not. Then I would like to know whether you knew that before you sent for me. He did not answer for a long moment. When he did, his voice was very even. I did. She had thought she would feel angry. She felt instead something colder and more useful, a kind of clarity. Then I will finish the letter, she said, and then we will have a different conversation. Yes, he said. We will. He did not move from the doorway. Miss Vance. Your Grace. For what it is worth, I did not bring you here to use you. I brought you here because your father once did me a kindness I never repaid, and because I needed the work done by someone whose discretion I could weigh against something other than money. I did not know, until I read your name on the letter your father left, that the kindness was older than your father. My father left you a letter. He did, 3 months before he died. And you are telling me this now. Because you stopped writing for 90 seconds, Miss Vance, and I would rather you finish the page knowing than wonder. He pushed off the doorframe. I will be in the next room. I suspect, when you have finished, that one letter will not be the end of the work. He went through the door. He did not close it this time. She turned back to the desk, picked up the quill, and translated the next line. She finished the letter at 2:30 in the morning. She knew the time because the long case clock in the hall had struck the half-hour twice while she was working, and because the Duke had come into the room once, near midnight, and set a covered tray beside her without a word. He had not stayed. She had eaten without tasting any of it, and gone back to the page. When she set down the quill for the last time, and laid the final translated sheet on top of the stack, the silence in the room had the quality of held breath. Her shoulders ached. Her right hand was cramped into the shape of the quill. She knocked on the inner door. He opened it at once. He had been sitting up. He had not been working. A book lay face down on the arm of his chair, and he had the look of a man who had not turned a page in some time. Finished? Finished. He stepped aside to let her into his sitting room. 2 armchairs faced a live fire. He gestured her to the chair opposite his and sat down, leaning forward, forearms on his knees. "Tell me." She told him. She did not soften any of it. She told him the names, as the letter had named them. 3 families, 2 of them very old, 1 of them his own. She told him the date the child had been born, the name the dying woman had given the child, and the name the child had been given afterward by the people who took it in. She told him where the woman believed the child had been sent. She told him what the woman had asked of whoever read this letter, that someone, anyone, see the child made safe, and that the truth not be used as a weapon against the wrong person. He listened without interrupting. His face did not change. When she had finished, he sat back in the chair, rested his head against the leather, and closed his eyes. He stayed like that for a long time. Then, without opening his eyes, he said, "The child is 28 years old. If the letter is correct, yes, and alive. That, the letter cannot tell you. It can only tell you the child was alive at 6. I know the child is alive at 28, Miss Vance, because I have spent the past 2 years looking for the child, and I found him 11 weeks ago." The clock struck 3. She did not speak. He opened his eyes. He does not know who he is. He believes himself to be the second son of a country gentleman in the north, a vicar. I have met him once, under another name. He has no reason to suspect anything of the kind I am about to inflict upon him, and I have not yet decided whether I will. Why did you bring me here, Your Grace? Truly, because the letter is not the only document. There are 6 more. They were sent to my late father over the course of 15 years, and he hid them, and I found them after his death, and I cannot read them. I do not know whether they corroborate this letter or contradict it. I need them translated. By you. Before I make any decision concerning a man who doesn't yet know his life is in my hands. She said nothing. It is not one letter, Miss Vance. It was never going to be one letter. How long? A week. Perhaps 2. Here. Here. They cannot leave this house. They cannot be seen by another translator. They cannot be copied by anyone but you. You are asking me to live in your house for a fortnight. I am asking you to be a guest, with whatever conditions you require for your comfort and your reputation. There is a household here. There are servants. There is a dowager aunt in residence who will serve, by her mere existence, as chaperone enough for any rumor that wishes to be answered. You will have your own apartments. You will have a maid. You will be paid each day in coin in your hand. And if I refuse, then I will pay you for tonight, return you to your lodgings, and find another way. There is no other way. There is always another way. It is simply worse. She looked at him. She looked at the fire. She looked at the carpet between them, threadbare in 2 places where a man had stood a great deal of his life. She thought about her rooms above the stationer's. She thought about her grandfather. She thought about her father, who had left this man a letter she had not known about. She thought about a vicar in the north who did not know that his life was being held in 2 pairs of hands tonight. I will need to send to my landlady for my things. I will see it done at first light. And I will need to write to a friend, so that if anything happens to me, someone knows where I am. Write the letter. I will have it taken and posted unread on my honor. Then we are agreed. We are agreed, Your Grace. He rose. He bowed, very slightly, with the particular care of a man who knew exactly how far to lean and no further, and crossed to the bell pull. I will have a room made up. Tomorrow you will meet my aunt, and she will decide whether you are tolerable. She will decide that you are. Sleep, Miss Vance. The dead woman has waited 60 years. She can wait another day. He pulled the bell. Somewhere in the depths of the house, an answering bell rang. Marisol Vance sat in the firelight and understood, with a precision that frightened her, that she had just agreed to live under the roof of a man whose name she had not known this morning, on the strength of a letter her grandfather had carried before her father was born. She did not know yet that she would not leave. She only knew that she did not want to. Holbridge Hall by daylight was not the house she had expected. She had imagined something cold and statelier than a chapel. What she found, when the maid drew back the curtains in her apartments at 8:30, was a long, warm gallery flooded with east light, a breakfast laid out on a sideboard that smelled of buttered eggs and good coffee, and a black cat asleep across the only chair that looked comfortable. The dowager aunt, who arrived shortly afterward and turned out to be called Lady Honora Caradoc, looked Marisol up and down once, asked her 2 questions in flawless Italian, received correct answers in the same, and announced that Marisol would do, that she had no patience for handsome young women without conversation, and that they would take tea together every afternoon at 4, whether the Duke approved or not. The Duke, when he appeared briefly at 10, appeared to approve. "You have charmed my aunt," he observed, holding the door of the library for her. "I have not managed it in 32 years. "I doubt that, Your Grace." "You should not. She tolerates me. That is a different verb." He left her at the desk in the inner study, where the second letter had already been laid out, and was gone the rest of the morning. The work was harder than the first. The dying woman's hand had grown shakier as the years had advanced. Marisol broke for an hour at midday, because Lady Honora insisted, and in the afternoon she returned to the desk and worked until her eyes blurred. She was leaving the study at 6, on her way to dress for dinner, when she met a stranger in the long gallery. He was perhaps 30, fair-haired, dressed in a riding coat that had been expensive when it was new. He turned when he heard her step. His face changed. "Good God," he said. "Marisol Vance." She stopped. She did not at first know him. Then she did, and the recognition arrived with the small, unpleasant lurch of a memory she had been pleased to set aside. "Mr. Brennan?" "Theron, please. We are older friends than that." She did not correct him. He had made the same correction 4 years ago, in the room where her father lay dying, and she had not corrected him then either. Theron Brennan was the son of a friend of her father's. He had courted her, in the loose, non-committal way of young men who have not yet decided what their life will require, the year before her father's illness. He had stopped courting her, with no discussion at all, in the week the debts had been read. "What are you doing here?" he said. "I might ask you the same." "I am a guest of His Grace. I have been a guest for 3 days. I am to stay another fortnight, perhaps longer." It was Marisol's turn to keep her face still. "I had not understood," she said, "that the Duke was entertaining. He is not, particularly. But my elder brother and Holbridge were at school together, and my brother has been ill, and the Duke has been kind enough to allow me the country air until my brother is well enough to travel home with me." He smiled the smile she remembered. "What in God's name are you doing here, Marisol?" "Working. Working. I was engaged by His Grace to perform a translation. There was more of it than was first supposed. I am to stay until the work is done." "A translation?" "Yes. Of what?" "That I am not at liberty to say." He looked at her for a long moment. "Marisol, forgive me. I am only surprised. Holbridge does not bring people into his house lightly. There has been talk in the household, these last hours, of a young lady arrived in the night and given the south apartments, and I confess I had assumed some distant cousin. To find that it is you. Why should it not be me? It should not be you, because the last time we spoke, you were a translator's daughter, living in 2 rooms above a stationer's, and you have not climbed so far in 4 years that a dukedom has any natural call on your services. You do not know what I have or have not climbed in 4 years, Mr. Brennan. Theron. Mr. Brennan. He took the rebuke with a small bow. You misunderstand me. I am only worried for you. Holbridge does nothing without a reason, and the reasons are not often kind ones. Whatever you are translating is a thing he believes dangerous. I should not like to see you hurt by it. I am not in any real danger, Mr. Brennan. You may not know that you are. A second voice, behind her, very even. Brennan. She did not turn. The whole gallery had altered behind her, in the way that air alters before a storm. Your Grace, said Theron Brennan. The Duke walked past her. He stopped beside Brennan and put a hand on the back of one of the gallery chairs, and the gesture had the quality of a man laying a hand on a horse to remind it of his presence. My guest is on her way to dress for dinner. I would not wish her detained. Of course not. You will sit with us at table. My aunt has placed you on her left. Miss Vance, I believe, will be on my right. How charming. You will find that you have a great deal in common with my aunt. She also speaks fluent Italian. He did not look at Marisol. He bowed to her in the formal manner of a host releasing a guest, and walked on down the gallery and out the far door. And only then did Marisol realize that he had placed himself, briefly, between her and Theron Brennan, in a way that no one else would have read, and that Theron Brennan had read perfectly. Well, said Brennan softly. How interesting. He smiled at her again. It was the same smile. It was not, this time, even a little bit charming. Lady Honora had ordered the long table set, which surprised the housekeeper. The candles had been brought up from the cellar where they were kept for the great occasions. There were 8 places, although there were only 4 people, and the empty chairs gave the dinner the strange formality of a portrait painted from memory. Marisol had been put in a green silk that Lady Honora had silently produced from somewhere within the house, on the polite fiction that it was an old gown of a niece's, and which fitted Marisol with the precision of a thing made for her. She had thanked Lady Honora and put it on, and now she sat at the Duke's right hand in a color she had not worn in 4 years. You speak French, I understand, Miss Vance, said Theron Brennan from across the table. I do. And Italian. And my goodness, what was the third? Russian, was it? German. German. How thoroughly equipped you are. My father was a translator for the Foreign Office. He thought it sensible that I be able to feed myself. Hugh Vance, said Lady Honora, brightening. I knew him. Long ago. He sat next to me at a dinner in Vienna in the year the embassy burnt. You were at that dinner? Said Marisol, before she could help herself. My dear, I was the reason it happened. The ambassador was an idiot, and I told him so before the soup. Your father laughed. I was sorry to hear of his death. Marisol, who had not heard her father remembered by anyone in nearly 2 years, lowered her eyes to her plate and breathed once, very carefully, through her nose. The Duke, on her right, neither looked at her nor away. He had, however, very quietly moved the salt cellar 2 inches closer to her hand. Holbridge, said Brennan brightly, you are very good to allow Miss Vance the use of the house. She tells me she is here on a piece of work. She is. Important work, evidently. All work is important, Brennan, or one would not pay for it. And you are paying her well, I hope. I am paying her precisely what her work is worth, which is more than I have paid anyone for anything in some time. The footman moved between them with the second course. You knew her father, then, said Brennan to Lady Honora. I have just said I did. And the Duke also, I think. It is unusual for a connection to descend 2 generations and only emerge when convenient. It is unusual, said the Duke, for a guest to take such an interest in another guest's affairs, Brennan. Oh, only as a friend. Marisol and I are old friends. Marisol cut a piece of fish in half with the precision of a woman, setting the limit of a property line. Mr. Brennan and I knew one another briefly when I was 19. We have not corresponded since. I should not call us friends. I should call us acquaintances who once met at the same dinners. Ah, said Lady Honora. He was one of those, was he? One of which? Said Brennan. One of the young men, my dear. Every handsome girl has them. They orbit her for a season and disappear when something heavier passes. Theron Brennan's smile thinned. You wound me, Lady Honora. I do not, dear. I have known you since you were 8 years old. Anselm, the woman is exhausted. Stop letting Brennan question her. I had not noticed I was permitting it. Then notice. The Duke turned to Marisol. He did not lower his voice. Miss Vance, you worked through the night and the better part of today. After dinner, if you will, we will walk a quarter of an hour in the long gallery, and I will explain how I propose to organize the days. Then, you will go to bed. I will not ask you to set a quill to paper before noon tomorrow. That is very generous, Your Grace. It is not generous. It is owed. He turned back to his plate. Theron Brennan, across the table, had stopped smiling altogether. After the cloth was drawn and Lady Honora had announced she would not sit up with the men because there were no men present worth sitting up for, the Duke offered Marisol his arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She took it. They walked out down the long gallery together. Theron Brennan was left standing alone in the doorway with a glass of port he had not asked for. The gallery was lit at intervals with single candles and sconces, and the portraits along the wall watched them with the impartial attention of dead relations. The Duke did not speak until they had reached the second window. He courted you. He believed himself to be courting me. I did not believe myself to be courted. He stopped when your father died. He stopped when my father's debts were read. Ah, a pause. Why is he in your house, Your Grace? Because his elder brother is a friend of mine and asked it. I had no reason 3 days ago to refuse. And now? And now I have a reason. But I cannot put him out of the house without raising the very questions I brought you here to avoid. He will stay until his brother is well enough to travel. How long? 2 weeks? Perhaps less. He suspects something. He suspects everything. He has suspected everything since he was a boy. It is the only thing about him that has ever been reliable. She stopped walking. He stopped a half-step later, turning to face her in the candlelight. Your Grace, if he writes to anyone about my being here, about the work, about a connection between us that does not exist, he will write to no one, because I will see to it that he does not. You are not to worry about Brennan. You are to translate the letters. That is your work. Brennan is mine. He did not say it gently. He said it as a fact. And in the way he said it, in the small, hard finality of mine, she understood for the first time that the man beside her had stopped, sometime in the last 48 hours, considering her merely a problem he had hired to solve. She did not know what he had begun considering her instead. She suspected, with a chill that was not unpleasant, that he did not know either. Theron Brennan caught her in the morning room 3 days later. She had come down early to take coffee alone. The work upstairs had begun to bend her shoulders into a permanent question mark, and she had wanted 10 minutes with no one's voice in her ears. The frost on the lawn was just beginning to silver. She had been standing at the window, with both hands wrapped around her cup, when she heard the door close behind her. Marisol. Mr. Brennan. You are very formal these days. I'm very tired these days. It comes to the same thing. He came around the table and stopped a respectable distance from her, but not a comfortable one. I have written to your brother. She turned at last. I do not have a brother. To your father's cousin, then. Mr. Vance of Whitcomb. He has the keeping of you, does he not? He has the keeping of nothing of mine, including my correspondence. And I do not believe that you wrote to him. You did not know his town until I named it just now. You did not name his town. Whitcomb is a parish, not a town. He lives at Whitcomb Glebe. If you had written to him, you would have addressed it correctly. You did not. You are bluffing. He laughed. It was a small, ugly laugh. You always were too clever, he said. I never could decide whether I admired it. You did not. No, I did not. Marisol, be reasonable. I am the only person in this house who has known you longer than a week, and I am telling you, as someone who once cared for you, that you are in a position that will be talked about. A young woman, unmarried, in residence at the country house of a duke, on no announced footing, performing some piece of work behind a closed door. You must see that. I see what I am told to see by the people who profit from my seeing it. You think I profit from this. I think you arrived here 3 days before I did, and have suddenly remembered an affection that did not survive the reading of my father's debts. I think a young woman who was not worth keeping at 20 has become very interesting at 24. I am not so foolish as I was at 19, Mr. Brennan. He went pale. The pallor surprised her. You are wrong about me, he said. I do not think I am. Marisol, Mr. Brennan. I made a mistake. I was a young man and a coward, and I let my mother talk me out of you, and I have regretted it for 4 years. To find you here, in this house, and to see the way Holbridge looked at you at table. How did Holbridge look at me at table? He did not answer. She set her cup down. You should leave the morning room, Mr. Brennan. He will use you and put you down. He has never married. He never will. There is a story about him, and I am not the man to tell it. But I am the man to warn you that whatever he has promised you, whatever he has made you feel, he has promised me nothing. He has made me feel nothing. You are lying to me. I am asking you to leave the room. The door opened. It was the Duke. He had come straight from the stables. There was mud on his boots, and the cold of the morning still on his shoulders. And he took in the scene in one long look, and did not raise his voice. Brennan, the morning room is occupied. You will find your coffee in the small parlor. My aunt is asking after you. Go. Theron Brennan went. He went without a word, but he went slowly, in the way of a man who wishes the room to remember that he was not driven out. The door closed behind him. The Duke crossed the room. He did not stop until he was beside her at the window. He did not touch her. He stood half a pace away, looking out at the same frost she had been looking at, and his breath, which still had the cold of the ride in it, fogged faintly on the glass. He is writing letters. He has not yet. He told me he had. He had not. He's making the threat in advance of the act. He will make the act. He may. Marisol. She closed her eyes. He had used her given name, and he had used it the way a man uses a thing he has been carrying carefully in his pocket for some time, and has only now, in private, set down on a table. Yes, I will see to him before he writes a word. You are not to think of him. You are not to be cornered by him again. If he comes within 10 feet of you in this house, I want to know it. Do you understand? Your Grace. Anselm. She opened her eyes. He was still looking at the frost. In this room, when no one can hear, I would rather you used my name. I have been your Grace for 30 years, and I am tired of it from you in particular. I cannot. You can. I am asking. You are asking too soon. A long pause. Yes, he said quietly. I am. He stepped back from the window. He bowed, very slightly, the small, precise bow that meant a host releasing a guest, and it should have been a relief, and was instead almost unbearable. "I am sorry, Miss Vance, for arriving in the room in mud. I will leave you to your coffee." "Anselm." He stopped at the door. He did not turn. "Be careful with Brennan today," she said. "He's afraid. He's more dangerous afraid than he is angry." "I know." He went out. She stood at the window with her cold cup of coffee and her hand pressed flat against the cold glass, and tried to remember what she had been thinking about before he had said her name, and could not, because she had not been thinking. She had been waiting, and she had not, until that moment, known it. The fifth letter was the worst. She had known it would be from the moment she unfolded the page. The dying woman's hand had slipped its discipline by then. The lines slanted down the right edge of the paper. The shorthand had grown sloppier. There were words Marisol could not read at all, and she had to set them aside and come back to them. And on the third return, she understood that one of the words was forgive, and the other was please. And she set the quill down and pushed her chair back from the desk and walked twice around the room. The clock had struck 11, then 12. 1. She had not eaten since the tray at 6. The lamp wanted oil. She got up to fetch it, and her ankle, which had gone to sleep, gave out beneath her, and she caught the corner of the desk to keep from falling and dropped the lamp. She caught it in time by the foot. The door from the sitting room opened. He had still not gone to bed. She had known he would not, although neither of them had said so. He was in his shirt sleeves, his hair pushed back from his forehead by a hand that had clearly been there several times in the last hour. He took in the lamp in her grip, her other hand braced on the desk in one quick assessing look. "You have not eaten. Bread at 6. You have not slept. You have not slept either, Anselm." It was the second time she had used his name. He heard it. He did not remark on it. He came forward, took the lamp from her hand, set it back on the desk, lit a second from the small box on the side table, and set it where it would catch the page. "Sit," he said. She sat. He did not sit. He went to the corridor door, called something quietly, and came back to the corner of the desk. "Tell me where you are." 40 lines from the end of this letter. There is one more after. What does it say? She opened her mouth to give him the safe answer, the summary, the edited version a translator gives a client, and she could not. She had not slept. The small, competent armor she put on each morning to do this work had slipped at some point in the last hour, and she had not noticed until now. Anselm, she is begging. Begging. For forgiveness. From whoever reads it. She knows by this letter that she will not live another year. She is begging the reader not to use the child as a weapon. She is begging the reader to remember that she was 19 when the child was conceived, and that she did not understand what she had agreed to, and that the man who fathered the child knew exactly what he had agreed to, and that he is the one who should answer, not the boy. She is naming him Anselm. She is naming the father by his full name and his title and the room she was in when he came to her. She stopped. "I am sorry. You have been at this desk for 14 hours. That is no excuse. It is precisely an excuse, Marisol. It is the only excuse there is." A small knock at the corridor door. He went to it. The cook, of all people, in a wrapper, with a tray. Bread and butter, a wedge of cold pie, a pot of something hot that smelled of cloves. He set the tray on the side table. He poured the hot drink into a plain cup and brought it to her. "Drink it. All of it." "I cannot work if I am." "You are not going to work. You are going to drink that and eat the pie, and then you are going to bed. The dead woman has waited 60 years. She can wait another 8 hours. You said that to me the first night. I am saying it again because it remains true." She drank. It was milk and honey, and cloves, and something stronger that her father had used to give her when she could not sleep as a child. She was, with no warning, on the edge of crying, and she could not afford to cry, and she set the cup down very carefully. He saw it. He did not look away. He did not, mercifully, come closer. "Tell me her name," he said. "Whose?" "The dead woman's. You know her now better than anyone alive. Tell me her name." "Aurélie." "Yes." He looked at the page. He looked at the lamp. He looked at her. "My father," he said, very quietly, "was not a kind man, Marisol. I have spent my life knowing that. I have not, until this week, known the precise shape of his unkindness. You have been giving it to me, line by line, for 7 days. And I have not once said the thing I am going to say now, which is that I am sorry. I am sorry that this work has fallen on your hands. I am sorry that the woman you are bringing back to me from a 60-year silence is being read first by you, and not by me, who should have carried her." She could not answer. He saw that too. He turned away. He went to the side table. He poured himself a small glass and stood with it untasted, his back to her, and she understood that he had turned away to give her the privacy to put her face back in order. When she had, she said, "Anselm." "Yes." "Sit down. Please." He sat. Not in his own chair. In the chair on the near side of the desk, the one she had been getting up from to fetch the oil, he set the glass down without drinking. "I will finish the letter tomorrow," she said. "I am going to bed because you are right, and because I do not trust my hand at this hour. But I want you to know, before I go, that I am not sorry I am the one reading her. I am glad. She should be read by someone who is not afraid of what she has to say. You are afraid. You are right to be. I am not, because she is not my dead. But I will carry her gently, Anselm." He did not answer. He reached across the desk. He did not take her hand. He put his hand, palm down, on the polished wood between them, fingers spread, in the simple, unguarded gesture of a man saying here, "This far," and she put her own hand down, on the wood beside his, not touching, only near. And they sat like that, both hands flat on the desk in the lamplight, for a count of perhaps 10 breaths. Then she stood up. She went to bed. The lamp in the inner study, when the maid came in at 6, was still burning. He had not blown it out. Theron Brennan tried to compromise her on the 11th day. It was clumsy and almost pitiful, and very nearly worked. He had gone to Lady Honora that morning with a long, perfectly shaped piece of concern. He had said that he was distressed for Miss Vance. He had said that he had grown up with her, that he had known her father, that he had a duty as the only person in the house with a prior claim on her welfare to make sure she was not being placed in any difficult position. He had said all of this in the tones of a man reluctantly volunteering, and Lady Honora, who was not a stupid woman, had listened politely, and then had told him in very precise Italian what she thought of his concern, and had instructed him to spend the day in the library and to leave Marisol Vance alone. He had spent the day walking the grounds, and he had contrived to be on the south terrace when Marisol came out for the afternoon air she had been ordered to take. Marisol. She did not stop. Did not. She had been ordered to walk for a quarter of an hour, and she walked, and he fell in beside her on the gravel. "I have come to apologize," he said. "I do not require it. You will have it nevertheless. Marisol, I have been ungenerous. I have been worse than ungenerous. I have been jealous, and the jealousy has made me cruel. I have spent the morning thinking about it. I should not have suggested the other day that there was anything improper in your situation here. I do not believe it. I think you are working. I think Holbridge respects you. I think. He stopped. Marisol, I am leaving tomorrow. She stopped walking in spite of herself. Tomorrow. My brother is well enough to travel. I have had the letter this morning. I will take the dawn coach. I will be gone before you sit down to breakfast, and I wished, before I go, to make my peace with you, Marisol. She studied him. She had been right about him before. She knew, with the calm clarity that the long weeks of work had given her, that she was not wrong now. He was lying. The brother was not well. He had received no letter. He had decided, sometime in the night, that he would say he was leaving in order to extract from her some private gesture in which she would consent to be alone with him for a quarter of an hour. I accept your apology, she said evenly. I wish you a safe journey. Marisol, will you walk with me as far as the lower terrace? I have a thing to give you. Something of your father's. I should have given it to you years ago. I have it in my room. I cannot fetch it onto the open terrace. If you will only wait for me in the orangery for 10 minutes. She almost laughed. She was so tired that the laugh nearly escaped her, and she kept it behind her teeth out of pure, trained discipline. No, Mr. Brennan. Marisol. No. I am sorry your brother is so much improved. I am sorry I cannot wait in the orangery. If you have a thing of my father's to return to me, you will return it through Lady Honora before the dawn coach, and she will give it to me at breakfast, and I will write to you to thank you for it. His face did not change at first. Then it did. You think very well of yourself, Marisol Vance, he said quietly. For a translator's daughter, living off the generosity of a man who will tire of you within the month. I think exactly as well of myself as my father taught me to think, Mr. Brennan, which is enough to know an orangery from a courtship. She walked back to the house. She did not run. She did not look behind her. She did not, until she was in the small sitting room with the door closed, allow her hands to begin to shake, and when they did, she pressed them flat together at her waist and made them stop. She told the Duke at dinner, not in front of Lady Honora. Afterward, in the gallery, on their nightly quarter hour, which had become the architecture the day was built around. He listened. He did not interrupt. When she had finished, he said only, "He leaves in the morning. He will not see you at breakfast. He will not see you at all. Anselm, he has gone too far. The loyalty is paid. He will be on the dawn coach. If he objects, I will make the scene travel. He will not object. Will his brother not? His brother knows what his brother is." He stopped at the second window, the one they always stopped at, although neither of them had ever said so. Marisol. Yes. I have not been honest with you about how I am. About this. About. He laughed, a small, dry laugh that was almost angry. I do not know how to begin a sentence that contains the word this. Then do not begin it. I must. Because you will leave this house in 3 days when the last letter is finished, and I will let you go, because that is the agreement. And if I do not say to you, before you go, Marisol, if I do not say it now, do not. I must. Anselm, listen to me. She turned to face him fully in the candlelight. I know. I know what you are going to say. I have known for 4 days. I have known since the night the lamp did not go out. I do not need you to say it tonight. I do not want you to say it tonight, because if you say it tonight, I will not be able to finish the work, and the work is the only thing in this house that is mine, and I will not have it taken from me by a sentence. He was silent for a long moment. Then I will not say it. Thank you. But I am going to say something else instead. I have a betrothal. The gallery went very quiet. Not a public one, not announced. Her name is Lady Cordelia Marchpoint. The agreement was made between her father and mine when I was 23. The announcement has been deferred year on year because I have refused to name the day. She does not love me. I do not love her. The agreement exists. It is the reason I will not be free 3 days from now, to ask of you the thing I could ask of no woman without freedom. And I am telling you this, because if I do not, I am the same kind of man as Brennan, and I will not be the same kind of man as Brennan in your sight." She did not speak. "You may," he said, "be angry. I am not angry. You may be. I am not. I am." She closed her eyes. "Anselm, I am tired. I have known about Lady Cordelia for 6 days. Lady Honora told me. I did not tell you I knew, because I did not want you to feel that you owed me the conversation. I have been very careful this week to want nothing from you that you could not give. 3 more days. Let me finish the letters. Then we will be honest with each other, in whatever room we are in then. Not here. Not tonight." He closed the small distance between them. He did not touch her. He bent his head until his forehead almost rested against hers, and stopped a hair's breadth short, and breathed out once, slowly, and she felt the warmth of it across her mouth. 3 days, he said again, quietly. 3 days. He drew back. He bowed, the small, precise bow, and walked her to the foot of the stairs, and watched her up to the landing. She lay awake until almost dawn. She did not regret a single word she had said. She did not regret either that she had not said the others. The 6th letter took her 2 days. It was the shortest of them, and by far the most difficult. The dying woman, by the time she wrote it, had been dying in earnest. The hand was scarcely a hand. There was a page with only the word Anselm repeated 4 times, in a script that grew smaller with each repetition, as if the writer were trying, by sheer reduction, to escape the fact that the reader of these letters might one day be a child she had never met, who carried the name of the man she had been writing to. Marisol had not understood, until that page, that the recipient of all 6 letters had been the late Duke himself. She had not understood, until that page, that the name Anselm was a family name, 4 generations old, and that the boy, now living somewhere in the north under another name, had once been baptized Anselm in secret, by a priest who did not know what he was doing, in a back room of a house Aurélie had not lived to see again. She held the page very still in both hands for a long time before she wrote down what was on it. She gave the Duke the translation that night. She did not give it to him at the desk. She gave it to him in his sitting room, in front of the fire, in the quiet way of a woman handing back a thing that had never truly been hers to hold. He read it once. He read it again. He sat with the page on his knee, his hands loose at his sides, the face of a man who had received a wound he had been expecting for 2 years and had still not prepared for. She did not say anything. When he could, he said, "Thank you, Miss Vance." Not Marisol. She had known, even as she handed him the page, that he would do that. The Marisol of the gallery, and the Marisol of the inner study, and the Marisol of the night the lamp did not go out, would all be put away by him, in a drawer she could not see. Because that was what a man like Anselm Caradoc did when he had made up his mind that a thing was over. "Will you be all right, Your Grace?" "I will be perfectly all right, Miss Vance. I will need a day, perhaps 2, to consider what to do. I will need a great deal more than 2 days to do it. None of that is any longer your concern. You have done what you came to do, and you have done it more honorably than I had any right to expect. The carriage will be ready at 10 tomorrow morning. Your fee will be in your hand before you step into it. I will not see you off. Lady Honora will. I have grown fond of her." "Good." He stood up. He went to the bell pull. He rang it once, briskly. "Good night, Miss Vance." She left the sitting room. She walked the gallery alone. She did not cry. She did not, for that matter, feel anything at all. which she recognized, distantly, as the body's small kindness to a person who has been asked to carry too much in too short a time. She left at 10 the next morning. Lady Honora cried and pressed into her hands a small leather case, which on the road Marisol opened to find a string of garnets that had clearly not belonged to any niece, ever. She wept then, briefly, and put the case away, and did not weep again. The carriage stopped at the post house at the edge of the Duke's lands to change horses. Theron Brennan was at the post house. He hadn't, of course, taken the dawn coach. He had taken a chamber at the inn instead 2 days ago and had been waiting. He stepped out of the taproom door as her carriage rolled to a halt, and the Duke's coachman, who had been instructed, swung down from the box and put himself between Brennan and the carriage door before Brennan had taken 3 steps. Brennan stopped. He smiled the small, ugly smile. "Miss Vance," he called pleasantly around the coachman. "How fortunate. You and I find ourselves on the road on the same morning. Would you do me the honor of accepting a place in my carriage as far as the next staging town? The road is long and the company poor. I am well provided for, Mr. Brennan. Thank you. Are you? You are alone in a Duke's carriage, and I imagine the Duke himself is not in it. I have a coachman, 2 outriders, and Lady Honora's maid. That is hardly alone. It will be talked about, Marisol, the maid notwithstanding. By whom, Mr. Brennan?" He smiled again. "By me," he said, "if you do not consent to take a quarter of an hour with me at the next inn. I have a thing of your father's to return to you. I find I cannot, in conscience, leave the country without putting it into your hands." The coachman stepped forward. Brennan stepped back. "That will not be necessary," said Brennan, raising his palms. "I am not threatening, Miss Vance. I am only old-fashioned in my notions of courtesy. Marisol, take the quarter hour. Refuse me, and I will do what I must. Accept, and we may part on terms that do not require the writing of any letters. You understand me." She understood him perfectly. She also understood, with a cold and adult clarity, that he had not yet written the letters, that he was still at the stage of rehearsing them, that she had perhaps 3 days, perhaps 4 days at most, before the rehearsal became the act. "Drive on," she said quietly to the coachman. The coachman swung up. The horses started. Theron Brennan, in the road behind them, did not move. He stood in the post yard with his hands at his sides and watched the carriage out of sight. She rode the next 30 miles dry-eyed and very still, with her hands folded in her lap, and she did not begin to cry until the carriage had passed the boundary of the Duke's lands and turned onto the Great North Road. And even then, she cried in silence, with her face turned to the window, and the maid pretended not to see. She arrived at her lodgings above the stationer's at 8 o'clock that night. The landlady had kept her rooms. The fire had been lit. Someone, somehow, had sent ahead. There was a covered tray on the small table. She sat down on the edge of her own bed, in her own clothes, in her own 4 years of carefully cultivated independence, and she understood, with a precision that was almost funny, that she had left half of herself in a house she could not have placed on a map a fortnight ago, and that nothing in the rooms above the stationer's was ever going to fit her again. The first letter came on the 4th morning. It was addressed to her landlady, not to her, which was the small, calculated cruelty of the thing. The landlady, Mrs. Pernhall, who had kept Marisol's rooms for 4 years and had never once asked an impertinent question, brought the letter up the stairs unopened and laid it on the breakfast table with the careful neutrality of a woman who had known, the moment she had read the direction, that the contents were not going to be neutral at all. "Forgive me, Miss Vance. I would not normally trouble you with my own correspondence, but the gentleman's name is yours." Marisol read the direction. "Mrs. Pernhall, of the lodging house above Garrick's stationery, from Mr. T. Brennan of Whitcomb." "Mr. Brennan is not of Whitcomb," said Marisol quietly. He has used the address to make you think he has a claim of acquaintance through my father's family that he does not have. May I open it? Please. She opened it. It was a masterpiece of its kind. He had not made a single accusation. He had only expressed concern. He had only mentioned, in the tone of a friend, distressed by what he had been forced to observe, that he had spent a fortnight in residence at Holbridge Hall, and had been pained to find Miss Vance there in unspecified employment, that he had observed her in the company of the Duke at hours, and in rooms not consistent with the work she claimed to be doing, that he had endeavored to extend to her the protection of an old family friend, and had been rebuffed, and that he felt himself bound, as a Christian, to inform her landlady of the situation. He had signed it, "Your obedient servant, Theron Brennan." He had not, of course, sent it only to Mrs. Pernhall. Marisol set the letter down. She poured herself a cup of tea she did not drink. She looked across the small breakfast table at her landlady, and saw, in Mrs. Pernhall's straight back and very steady mouth, that the woman had not believed a word of the letter, and was angry, and was waiting to be told what to do. "How many copies, do you think?" said Marisol. "At least 3. The bookseller has had one. The vicar of St. Anne's has had one. There may be others. There will be others. He will have written to my father's cousin at Whitcomb Glebe. He will have written to 2 or 3 gentlewomen of his mother's circle. He will have written, possibly, to Lady Cordelia Marchpoint." Mrs. Pernhall did not flinch. "I will not give you up, Miss Vance. I will tell anyone who calls that the letter is a calumny written by a rejected suitor. It is. Then we will weather it. Mrs. Pernhall, I cannot ask you to weather what you have not earned. He will not stop until I am out of these rooms. You have a livelihood here. I will not have your house damaged by a letter that has my name on it. You will not be put out of my house, Miss Vance, by a coward writing under a false direction. You are very kind. I am very angry. They are different things." There was, that afternoon, a second letter. This one was addressed to Marisol, in a hand she did not at first recognize. On paper, she did. Holbridge. Paper. The seal had been pressed without the signet. A plain wax disc, like the second seal on Aurélie's letter 60 years ago. He had remembered. He had used the same trick on purpose. The reading of it would mean, to her, what no other reader would notice at all. She broke the seal. "Miss Vance, I have learned within the hour that Brennan has begun to write. I will not insult you by asking whether you are well. You are not. Neither am I. I write to tell you 3 things, and to ask nothing. The first, I have today written to Lord Marchpoint, and dissolved the agreement that has stood between his family and mine for 9 years. I have made no condition of the dissolution. I have offered no explanation that touches on you, and none was required, because Lord Marchpoint is not a fool. Lady Cordelia is informed. She is, I am told, relieved. The thing is done. I do not write this as a man laying a gift at your feet. I write it as a man telling a colleague that an obstacle to honest speech between us has been removed by his own hand. The second, I will be in town within the week. I do not yet know on which day. I will not call at your lodgings without first writing again, because I will not have you ambushed in your own door by a man who once ambushed you in his own gallery. The third, Brennan will be answered. By me. Not by letters. He has miscalculated the company he is moving in, and he will discover the miscalculation before he writes the next of these. You are not to write to anyone about him. You are not to defend yourself. You are to sit very still in your rooms and let me do this, because it is mine to do. I am not free, Marisol. I am only freer than I was a fortnight ago. I do not know what I am asking. I am only telling you what is true. She read it 3 times. She did not cry. She did not, this time, want to. She folded the letter very carefully along its existing creases. She walked to the small writing desk in the corner of the parlor, unlocked the lower drawer with the key she kept on a ribbon at her wrist, placed the letter inside, and locked the drawer again. She did not write back. She sat down at the breakfast table. She picked up the cold tea. She drank it. Then she went down the stairs and asked Mrs. Pernhall to keep the door against any caller whose name was Brennan, and any caller whose name was Caradoc until further notice, and to deliver any further letters from either gentleman directly into her hand, without comment. Mrs. Pernhall said, "Yes, Miss Vance," with the briskness of long practice, closed the kitchen door, and asked nothing. Outside the stationer's window, the church clock struck 4. She did not know, sitting in her own parlor in her own chair, whether she was waiting for the Duke or whether she was waiting for the next of Brennan's letters. And she understood, with a small, cold honesty, that she was waiting for both, and that she did not yet know, in her own heart, which of the two she was the more afraid of. He arrived on the 8th day. He did not write a second time, in spite of his promise. She understood why, when she heard the carriage in the street below at 2:30 in the afternoon, and went to the window, and saw the team that was unmistakably his, and saw also, behind it, a second carriage she did not recognize, but immediately suspected. He had not written to give her warning, because he had wished to arrive simultaneously with the man he had brought with him. Mrs. Pernhall met them at the street door. Marisol heard the Duke's voice, very level, ask whether Miss Vance was at home. She heard Mrs. Pernhall, very calm, ask whether Miss Vance was expecting him. She heard the Duke say, with a small, almost amused honesty, "No, ma'am, she is not. But if you will tell her I am here with Mr. Brennan in the carriage, I think she will agree to receive us both for a quarter of an hour." Mrs. Pernhall came up the stairs. "He has Mr. Brennan with him," I gathered. "Shall I send them away?" "No. Show them up to the front parlor. Sit yourself in the corner with your mending. Do not leave the room while they are in it. If I ask you to leave, you will refuse." "Yes, Miss Vance." They came up. The Duke first. He did not wait to be announced. He came in at the head of his own arrival, in his traveling coat and his black gloves, and he stopped just inside the door and bowed to her with the small, precise bow she had come to know. His face was composed. His eyes were not. There was a pale tightness about his mouth that she had seen once, on the night the lamp did not go out, and that she had not seen since. Behind him, between the Duke and the Duke's largest manservant, came Theron Brennan. Brennan was not bound. He had not been compelled. But there was, in the angle of the manservant's shoulder, relative to Brennan's, a fact that did not require restating. Brennan had been collected. He had been collected in a manner that did not bruise, but did not negotiate. Brennan had at least the decency to look pale. "Miss Vance," said the Duke, "forgive the irregularity. Mr. Brennan and I were in the same carriage by his consent. He has agreed, in writing, that he will say in this room, in your presence, and in your landlady's, what I am about to ask him to say. He has agreed, because the alternative I offered him was considerably less pleasant. I did not want this to take place in your parlor. He insisted. He said, and I think rightly, that the apology should be made where the harm was done, in the rooms where you live. So we are here." "Mr. Brennan," said Marisol. He bowed. It was the worst bow she had ever seen a man perform. "Miss Vance, you may speak now." He spoke. He spoke for perhaps 3 minutes. He withdrew, in language that had clearly been written for him by another hand, every implication he had made in his letters. He acknowledged that his characterization of her conduct at Holbridge Hall had been false. He acknowledged that he had observed nothing in her behavior, or in the Duke's, that warranted any letter of any kind. He acknowledged that he had been motivated by jealousy, and by financial pressures of his own, and that he had attempted to use her as a means of relieving those pressures by forcing the Duke into a position he could resolve only by paying, and that this had been beneath the conduct of a gentleman, and that he was sorry. He acknowledged that he would, in the next post, send a written retraction over his own signature to every party to whom he had sent the original letter. He acknowledged that he would not, for the remainder of his life, address her in a public room or a private one without invitation. He said all of this without once meeting her eye. When he had finished, the Duke said very mildly, "And the rest, Brennan?" Brennan flinched. "And," said Brennan, "I undertake before these witnesses that I will leave for the continent by the next sailing, and that I will not return to England within 5 years, and that if I attempt to return inside that term, His Grace is empowered to publish the document I have signed today, which contains a fuller account of certain transactions at the Tarrant Bank in which my name appears, and which I should not wish publicly known." "Thank you, Brennan," said the Duke. Thereon Brennan stood in the middle of the small parlor, in his expensive new coat, with the Duke's manservant a half-pace behind him, and he was, Marisol realized, going to weep. Not from remorse, from the simple cornered humiliation of a man who had spent his whole life being the cleverest person in his own accounting, and who had today discovered that there had been a separate set of books all along. She did not pity him. She did not, equally, gloat. "Mr. Brennan. Miss Vance, you will leave my landlady's house. You will not write to it again. You will not pass the stationer's window again on your way to wherever you are going. Are we clear?" "Perfectly." "Then go." The manservant collected him. The manservant collected him without a hand on his sleeve, and yet entirely. The door closed. The footsteps descended. The street door closed. The second carriage rolled away. The Duke remained. He did not move from where he had stopped just inside her parlor door. He did not approach her. He looked at Mrs. Pernhall very politely and waited. Mrs. Pernhall folded her mending with great care. "I will be in the kitchen, Miss Vance. The door will be open. I will not be far." "Thank you, Mrs. Pernhall." The landlady went out. She left the door open by exactly the width that propriety required, and not a finger more. Marisol and Anselm Caradoc were alone, more or less, for the first time since the gallery. He took off his gloves. He set them on the small side table by the door. He did not come further into the room. "Marisol. Anselm. I have nothing rehearsed." "Good." "I told you in the gallery that I had a betrothal. I told you the night before you left this house that I would not be free 3 days later. The betrothal is gone. It went on Tuesday. Lord Marchpoint received my letter on Wednesday. By Thursday morning, he had agreed in writing to the dissolution. By Thursday afternoon, Brennan was sitting in my study, because I had had him collected the moment your carriage cleared my gates, and held him in a small inn for 6 days, while I closed the other business. Today is the 8th day. It is the first day I could come to you with both hands clean. I did not want to come to you with one hand still occupied with somebody else." She could not speak. "I am not asking you anything today, Marisol. I am telling you that the obstacles I named are gone. There are others. My family will be unkind. There will be talk. There will be cousins who refuse to receive you, and aunts who will write me extraordinary letters. I will weather them, because I have weathered worse. But you have not weathered them, and you are not obliged to, and I will not have you decide today, in your own parlor, with the smell of Brennan's coat still in the air, what you wish to do about a man you met 3 weeks ago." She found, with some difficulty, her voice. "You came to my parlor." "I did." "You did not write." "I did not." "Why not?" "Because if I had written, you would have answered the letter, and the answering of it would have decided us, and I did not want us decided in writing. I wanted you to look at me and to know whether you wished me to stay in the room." She looked at him. She knew. "Anselm," she said, "sit down." He sat down. He sat for 40 minutes in her front parlor, and Mrs. Pernhall in the kitchen pretended she could not hear voices, and they spoke quietly, like two people who had survived a long fall. He did not propose to her that afternoon. She had been afraid he would. She had been more afraid he would not. He told her, instead, that he would not propose until she had been free of his house for 3 months and had had the chance to remember her own life. He told her that he would call on her every Wednesday during those 3 months, with Mrs. Pernhall in the room, in the conventional way. At the end of 3 months, if she still wished to receive him, he would ask. If at any point she changed her mind, he would withdraw with no scene. She accepted the call. She told him that her father had taught her to feed herself, and that she had no intention, at 24, of being taught otherwise by any man, including one she might in 3 months consent to marry. He laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh outright. It was a good laugh, low and surprised, and a little rusty, and she filed it away with the other things she had filed away from that house. He came every Wednesday. He did not miss one. Mrs. Pernhall sat in the parlor with her, mending the first 3 weeks. By the 4th Wednesday she had begun, without comment, to take the mending into the hallway. By the 7th week, the mending was in the kitchen, and the parlor door was on the latch. And once or twice, when he had risen to take his leave, he had stopped in the middle of the room and looked at her, and not gone. And she had not asked him to. The scandal, which was real, did not last as long as he had warned her it would. Brennan's retractions, which arrived in the following post in the wretched scrawl of a man writing under explicit instruction, did not on their own kill the rumor, but they took the shine off it. The fact of the Duke's broken arrangement with Lord Marchpoint did the rest. Society, which had been prepared to whisper that the Duke had thrown away an alliance for a translator's daughter, found itself unable to whisper the second half of the sentence once the Duke himself, in a quiet, deliberate, almost boring way, began to be seen at 1 or 2 public gatherings each month with Miss Vance on his arm and Lady Honora Caradoc on the other. Lady Honora was decisive. She arrived in town at the end of the first month and announced to 4 matriarchs of her acquaintance that Miss Vance was a young woman of considerable accomplishment, and that any lady wishing to take exception to the Duke's regard for Miss Vance was at liberty to take exception to her, Honora Caradoc, first. 3 months passed. He came on the Wednesday at the end of the 3rd month at his usual hour. He had brought no flowers. He had brought a small folded sheet of paper, which he produced near the end of the call, unfolded, and laid on the small table between them. It was not a letter. It was a single line in his own hand. "Will you, Marisol Vance, marry me?" No question mark, no flourish, no salutation. The plainest sentence he had ever written her. She read it once. She picked up the pen that lay in the inkstand on the table, dipped it, and wrote, beneath his line, in her own careful round letters, "Yes." She passed the paper back. He looked at it. He looked at her. He did not speak for a long moment, and when he did, he said only her name, and put his hand flat down on the paper between them, and she put her hand down on the paper beside his, not touching, only near, the way they had sat once at a desk in a house she had not been able to place on a map. And then, this time, he turned his hand over, palm up, and waited, and she laid her hand into his, and his fingers closed around hers, and that was the answer and the question both in the same gesture. They were married 6 weeks later in the small parish church at the edge of his lands, with Lady Honora and Mrs. Pernhall and a young vicar from the north, whose name was not the one he had been baptized with, and who had only recently been told what the Duke had wished to do for him, and who had asked, with grave good sense, only one favor of his half-brother. that the truth be allowed to live quietly in the keeping of the 4 people who already knew it. The Duke had agreed. Aurélie's letters had been read once aloud by Marisol to the brother she had never expected to meet, and had then been placed in a sealed box and given into the brother's keeping. The brother attended the wedding as the vicar who performed it. It was the only kind of justice the dead woman could have asked for, and she had asked for it in the 6th letter, in a hand that was almost not a hand anymore, and Marisol had translated the line and remembered it. Epilogue. 2 years later, on a winter evening, the Duchess of Holbridge stood at the long gallery window and watched the snow come down across the south lawn. The house behind her was full of the noise that a house only ever made at Christmas. Lady Honora arguing about cards in the drawing room, the cook singing in the kitchen passage, a child somewhere in the upper floor refusing very loudly to go to bed. He came up behind her without speaking, the way he had learned to do, and rested his hand at the small of her back. "You are wool gathering, Marisol. I'm thinking about a desk." "Which desk?" "The one in the inner study, the night the lamp did not go out. I did not blow it out because if I had blown it out, you might have thought I had gone to bed, and you might not have come to find me." "I would not have come to find you." "No," he agreed gravely. "You would not have. That is why I left it lit." She laughed. She turned in his arm. "Anselm." "Yes. You hired me to translate 1 letter. I did. It was not 1 letter. It was never going to be 1 letter. You knew. I suspected." "You suspected what then, Anselm?" He thought about it. He looked at the snow and at the gallery candles reflected in the dark glass, and at the woman in front of him who had walked into his study in a borrowed plain dress on a winter afternoon, and had not, in any meaningful sense, walked out again. "I suspected," he said quietly, "that I had been waiting for the right hand to read the letter for far longer than I had been waiting for the letter." She put her face against his coat. She did not say anything at all for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "Thank you for not letting me go." "I never let you go," he said. "I only stopped pretending I had hired you." From the drawing room came the sound of Lady Honora declaring war on a deck of cards. They stood at the window and watched the snow. And somewhere upstairs, in the inner study, locked in a sealed box that only 2 of them and 1 quiet vicar in the north would ever open, a dead woman called Aurélie slept the long, late, gentle sleep of a person who had at last been read by the right hands. Thank you for staying with Marisol and Anselm to the very end of their story. They began with a single letter. They ended with a household, a name, a child, set safely into the keeping of his own life, and a lamp that was never blown out. If their story moved you, please subscribe and ring the bell, because there are more stories waiting. More letters that change a life. More small rooms that turn out to be the doorway to a larger one. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories are still being written.